Hi, everyone. Imagine a world where there are no problems. Imagine a world where there are no diseases that can't be cured. A world where there are no wars, just one world with abundant resources. Doesn't sound real, right? It sounds as if it's a work of fiction. Now imagine another world wherein each and every child across the globe grows up believing in a cause, wants to be an innovator, wants to be a change maker for a problem that he sees in his society, in his community. If you imagine that, the first picture of that world starts to come alive. That's what our education needs to do. It needs to create innovators. It needs for each child to believe that I can change in my own way. I can solve a problem. And it needs to create an atmosphere where every child starts feeling empathy towards each other, compassion, and in their own way, work towards the greater good of humanity. Today's guest is someone who I've known since she was 4 years old. She's grown into this dynamic 20-year-old young girl. Let me just introduce her with a little video clip. I'll just share a video clip with you.
So, what if you supported more youth entrepreneurs? What if you supported more initiatives led by young change makers? What if you went to that one young person, maybe your child, maybe your neighbor's kid, and told them that if you have a problem, I'd love to help you solve it? What if we stopped documenting, filming, speaking, meeting? What if we actually started solving, changing, and going out there and doing the real work? What if we saw the glass half full? We could all come together to make this world a beautiful place. Thank you so much.
Wasn't that impressive? She's someone who's impacted the lives of millions. She recently won the prestigious Dinah Award. She was the Global Changemaker 2018. She has won her stories Women on a Mission Young Achievers Award. BBC called her the Greta Thunberg of India, a force to reckon with. I'm so happy and so excited to welcome on Doodles today the water girl of India, Garvita Gulhati. Hello, Garvita.
Sorry, I was on mute. Hello.
So good to see you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here today.
Absolutely. I'm so thrilled that I'm going to talk to you today. And I think just take it away from me and wow us with your story about your initiatives, the work that you're doing. So looking forward to hear all that.
I'm very excited to have this conversation, and thank you for creating this platform for allowing us to imagine a better education. And I think conversations like this are really going to help create that space for the youth of the world.
Let's hope so. Good. Please go ahead. Let's hear about your story, your initiatives.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so I would probably just love to start from where it all started. So as you know, I went to National Public School, Kormangla, for almost 14 years, and that's also where my journey of change making started. So we had this teacher, Purnima ma'am, who was an environmental education teacher, and like if I recollect, and almost all students in school know her, because from 6th to 12th, she taught all of us environmental studies. And I remember being in 6th grade and sitting in her class and feeling like this is the most useless class ever, because, she was just making us draw like the planet and what it was and what it's become. And, all of these different things she was trying to teach us and make us understand about the environment and what's been happening. And of course, as the teenagers that we were, we kind of just let it go. And we were like, we would mock it. But very soon, I started to realize the passion with which she taught the subject was something that I really hadn't seen anywhere else. And more than anything else, she taught a subject that was not a compulsory subject, and she taught it just out of her own willingness, and she did it all by herself. And she's been a huge inspiration in always just focusing on the idea that you need to make a difference in the world, for me especially. And I remember, so in the year 2015, India faced a lot of issues with regards to the water crisis. So we had severe droughts, and I was reading about farmers taking their lives across the country, especially in Mumbai. And I had lived in Mumbai for 4 years before coming to Bangalore. So it somewhere touched me. And I was also, reading about these women and girls who were walking miles. Women and girls walk on more than 6 hours every day just to procure water. Yeah. And it's something that we get without even moving a finger. And even the water that they get is not clean, and it might not even be feasible for them to use. And then I was reading about how children in over 100 million homes across the country were losing their lives just because of the lack of access to clean drinking water. And all of this was really, reading about it, I was watching it. I used to live on Sarjapur Road, and there was a small village behind that house, and I was actually seeing these women walking with like pots of water and struggling to just get that little bit of water to drink. And I just had to go to my kitchen and pick up a bottle. Like, it just felt unfair. And that's when I really wanted to do something about it, but I just didn't know where to start. And so on June 5th, now coming back to why I started the story with Purnima ma'am, on June 5th, World Environment Day, she had this presentation done for us where she got a lot of information, got some speakers to talk about environmental issues, etc. And, of course, as we were going through, sitting, through it as any normal assembly, and as all of us were, there was this one particular slide that said 14 million liters of water is wasted every year simply in the water that you leave behind in glasses at restaurants. And that's what kind of left me shocked, and especially because I was reading about all of it very recently, and the matter just trivialized it. And I just realized that there's so many trivial ways in which we just waste water, which can actually be prevented by simple human conscience, actions, and mindfulness. And that's kind of when I decided, okay, I want to make a change, and I want to at least try and leave a mark and try to remove that 14 million liters of water was the goal, to remove that number from the charts. This should not happen. Why should we even have to waste that water? It's not even something that, okay, it's like a technical snag, or it's like a environmental problem. No, this is human action, pure human action, and we can prevent it from not happening. So let's do it. And so I started going to restaurants. I started talking to them. I would have visited like over 50 restaurants across 6 months, gathered a few friends, which was difficult because a lot of them, so I named my initiative as Why Waste, because why waste water? Right. And the idea was also to, in the future, if I ever want to talk about other environmental issues, why waste is a very nice and broad theme under which you can always talk about sustainability. And so would have visited over 50 restaurants over the 6 months, got a couple of friends to join me sometimes, which was, again, like I said, hard, because some of them would say, oh, why are you wasting your time with why waste? And then there would be teachers who would keep saying that you need to focus on your studies right now, that's important. And you know how the Indian high school system is. I was in like the 10th 11th grade, and you have to just be prepping for JEE and all of those things. But I would try to find whatever little time I would get over the weekends in between school and coaching classes and all of these other things, and just try and visit and talk. And so I would go speak to these managers and give them ideas on how they can they change the way that they focus on this issue. So for example, keep a jug on the table, or keep a water bottle, or ask your customers, do you want more water? But unfortunately, they were not very accepting of any of these ideas, because the restaurant industry is a hospitality industry, and for them to kind of change the way that they do things was very hard. And for them, filling the glass full was actually a norm. It's like what restaurants are graded on.
Right, right.
So so it was too hard to break into that junction. And people were so shocked, because like restaurants are something that you don't care about. Water is, and that water is something that's so, like, it's just such a mundane issue if you think of it, but the impact is insanely large. And that's what kind of just kept driving me to do more. And so many, in fact, so many managers and waiters and all would not even want to listen to the ideas that I had to give, because they kept saying, oh, why should we take advice from a 15-year-old? What do you have to offer us that we don't already know? So that was very
Because I
heartbreaking.
think it was like really, I mean, a 15-year-old standing and saying that, what you're doing is wrong. You can do it right by doing this. So the picture itself is like, okay, what does this girl know, kind of a thing, right? They would not probably take you seriously for just the fact that you were a 15-year-old.
Absolutely, it's that whole perspective that their youth, what can they tell us that we already don't know in life. And so then that's kind of then what led me into thinking of, I need to do this differently. We need to figure out a way, to an innovative and more experiential way to kind of get this out to the people and to the waiters. And then that's when I came up with the idea of glass half full, which is based on the fact that you fill your glass only half instead of filling it full. So you take only as much water as you need, and you don't waste. And it's been very, I don't want to, revolutionary is a big word, but just even if in changing the mindsets of people, it's been very, very impactful, because it makes you not only think of the water that you're consuming in a restaurant, but when you go back home as well. How much water do I really need? This water, do I only need to take as much as I want? And the reason it worked out with restaurants was because the way it made it an activity. So usually
Yeah.
you're very used to waiters filling your glass full, and if they would have just asked you, do you want more water? Okay, it's like it's just a thing that they're doing. But when they fill it only half, you're curious about why they did that.
Why?
Yeah, they'll ask why. Like, customers ask why. Otherwise, none of the other methods that we suggested, no one was asking why. But this was the first time that they asked why, and that's what kind of, I think, broke through, and that's what worked, because customers were curious. And then we trained waiters to say that, and we taught them about the problem, and then they were very sympathetic and empathetic, and they really understood what we were trying to say. And then we said, okay, the reason you fill only half is because the other half is for someone else who probably does not have access to it today, who's going to get it because you have saved that half a glass of water and finished everything that you have taken. So that worked out well.
And
And
also, I
then
think the waiters were probably closer to the real problems, right? Other
yeah,
than the ones in the management, sitting on top, who were just making those norms. And these waiters were probably closer to what they were seeing around them in the society, that it was a big issue. The water was an issue, right? So
absolutely.
I
And
think,
I think what you said was so important, because the waiters empathize with us a lot more than the management. Because, of course, for them also, they are picking up those glasses of water and throwing it away. They're just throwing it away, and they see it. The managers don't see it on a daily basis, and any conscious citizen is not going to feel good about doing that. So, and then, but we still, you'd still get some customers who are cranky and leave behind water. So then we made like a list of, we made something called the restaurant module, which even if that water is left behind, we gave them like 10 different ways of how to reuse it. We give them a ton of ways on how they can completely make their restaurant water friendly, eco friendly. And we brought up these wonderful examples of restaurants like Yogistan and all of these places that are already there, who are doing a wonderful job, and tried to help build up on this concept. And that was really the start of what became a series of ideas that were, it became like the beginning of where we were trying to build ideas and concepts that can help solve the global water crisis, I would say.
yeah.
Simple, mindful changes, and just very simple things with no big, massive technologies or And nothing. It's just your habits that we want to
Yeah,
change.
yeah. Awesome. I mean, I think it must have been a revelation of its own kind for, the people that you interacted with, and for yourself also interacting with so many different, people, and how to convince them. Because I think to bring in a change in a thought process is, I think, one of the most difficult tasks that anybody can do. And well, you did it. So that's amazing. At the age of 15, you stood up in front of the world and you said, look here, there's something wrong here and we need to bring a change. And you made it, and now you've been recognized for it. And I think there is another initiative, the Lead Young, also you're a part of. Yes. So
Yes.
why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So when I started to realize that I can make a difference by just standing up for it, and that my voice is actually more powerful than a lot of others, just because I'm young. And I also, through my interactions with friends, family, I realized that youth have really cool ideas, really innovative, really smart ideas. It's because they're seeing it around them every single day. They see these. We are growing up in these problems. For example, our parents, and for you all, you grew up in a very different world, and the problems that you had to solve and come through and overcome were very different from what we are doing. For us it's if you see the world right now, it's more about sustainability and all of these various things. In your times, it was more about the economy and just trying to make a living for yourself. This is what I've learned from the interactions with my parents. For them, of course, their priority was that. And so I realized, anyways, that's another different discussion. Probably come but, but I began to realize that every young person sees problems around them, and I think every young person and every young person should go out there and try to make a difference. And it's just the kind of changes that it brought in my life. I was a very shy, not very confident person, but I feel like I found my voice,
Yeah.
and I wanted to help as many young people find their voice through that journey as well, and to realize that they have the capability to make a difference in the world. And more than anything else, the world needs them to make that difference because of
Absolutely.
the way that our world is going. And there's this quote that I love using that I came up with like a while back. But they say that change is the only constant. But now I think the world is in the constant need of change makers, and that's
Yes.
that's something that just with through conversations, and I realized that we need to do this. And so and I was very lucky to be selected as an Ashoka Youth Venturer back in the year 2016. And Ashoka is this wonderful community of global social entrepreneurs. And in I think July 2017, I was put on this call with Bill Drayton, who is the CEO of Ashoka. They chose about like 6 of us young people from India, and he talked about this new initiative that he created called the Lead Young Initiative, where he shared stories of change makers who started at a young age and today are successful at whatever they're doing in life, and they're very mindful, conscious, wonderful citizens just because they were change makers as young people. And regardless of whether they went on to become entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurs, or whatever they did in their lives, they were just very good at it and very successful with it because they were change makers when they were younger. um, and then we were discussing and brainstorming ways on how we can bring these stories to as many children as possible in the world, because those stories were really empowering, and especially the dialogue that Ashoka uses is wonderful. I love the kind of perspective they bring. It's not just the usual, oh, this person achieved this. No, it's really their journey, their path,
Yeah.
and what qualities they picked up on the way that makes every child want to have that those qualities, or every parent want to have their children to have that. So
Yeah.
then I created the initiative Lead Young at Schools, deriving it completely from what Bill started, and started sharing these stories across schools in India. Of course, started with Bangalore. We got about 30 schools, and we were sharing these stories on a weekly basis. Just 5 minutes every week, a student comes out during the assembly, reads out a story, and it's of any young person around the world. And we're trying to tell young people that there is someone just like you out there who has seen a problem, and we all see problems and we all have solutions to them, but we just don't go out there and implement it. So the idea behind Lead Young was look at these amazing young people who've gone out there and implemented, so you can do it too. Don't be afraid, don't be scared. It's actually the easiest thing ever, and I mean, the path is difficult, but
Yeah.
the fruit is wonderful.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you nailed it, because I think what you said is correct, that everybody can solve problems. It's just that we need to start thinking in that way. We need to start looking around. We need to, widen our horizons to look at our society, our community, our world around us, and see that what is that problem, where I can chip in, where I can, make a difference. So you said it. And like it's the tradition at Desk Doodles, every time, Garvita, we have a guest, and we have a little question for the guest. Okay, so I will put the big question to you. And the big question is, do you think that our education system inspires students to become change leaders, change makers?
I don't think so. I don't think the education system inspires us to become change makers. I think it is the small acts of some teachers and some of the initiatives that they take, that some schools take, that really push you in that direction. And I cannot deny to say that there is definitely change happening. There I can see the difference in NPS itself. You know, as a school, when we left, there weren't that many people who were trying to make a difference, and now almost every young person at school is thinking of a way of doing something. Maybe not now, but very soon in their lives.
Yeah.
And I think that is something that is definitely helping. I think change making there is something called change maker education, where it's not just the subjects that we learn, but the perspective with which we learn it
Right.
is what helps us see the world in a very different, very innovative and creative way, and that allows us to come together with the world and help make a difference, which is something that we need to really integrate into our education system. And then the second is I really love initiatives by organizations, one like Ashoka or even the Udhyam Foundation, where I recently read how the Udhyam Foundation has, made entrepreneurship a compulsory subject, in across hundreds of schools in Delhi, which is, I think, really wonderful, because it's those skills that you pick up, whether it's an entrepreneur, social entrepreneur, just trying to make a difference. I think every entrepreneur is born out of problems. The reason you create a product or you build a company is because you want to try to solve something else, which is very similar to what a change maker is trying to do. And I think that's the beauty of the definition of an entrepreneur. And so just bringing in that kind of education into our schooling systems is something that we need, and I'm glad that people are accepting it. But I think we still have a long way to go in terms of what we're learning and consuming. These are still external forces trying to, pound through the system and make an impact and help. India having like 42% of the population being young,
Yeah.
it's just so important for us to have that kind of thought process developed from a very, very young age.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what I wanted to also stress upon, that these conversations don't need to start when the child is, a student is entering high school or student is entering middle school. Because, I mean, it's just an observation on my part. When I thought that, in the recent years, when there has been a lot of increase in students stepping abroad for their undergrad studies, is when we started talking about giving back to humanity, giving back to the community. It's only when there was this thing about writing your statement of purpose and applications, that we started. I'm not saying that that is wrong. It is good that somewhere it came in. Whatever triggered it, it was great. But now we need to integrate it from early years onwards. It could be as early as the kindergartners, doing it only inside their little bubble. It's a thought process that we need to empower our children with. And once they start even in that little kindergarten area, and then when they step out into the primary, then looking around them in their school, and then when you step out, looking around into your society and community, you can help children broader than vision in such a way that by the time they're already thinking like that. So it's easier to make a change when you can see a picture, right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes.
In fact, on the lines of that, something interesting, that we're doing at Y Waste recently, that we're creating, actually, it should be out in a month. We've actually created a series of 13 children's books, which have like, which are fables, which have like animal stories, really fun. Like, it's like how we used to read like Hansel and Gretel and all of those stories.
Right.
And, there were also all of these other fables that we would read that would teach us, be honest, be kind, and all of those things. But
Right.
these fables really teach you how to be sustainable, be eco-friendly, and be the change that you wish to see in the world. So we try to bring out through those stories, it could be like a small cub who's gone out there and tried to get something done, and just for their communities, and telling these young people indirectly. I realize that a lot of my mindset and the way that I think is because of the way that I've been raised, which is another big thing, like the way that what your parents make you think, or the experiences that they give you. I've spent more of my birthdays at like this, at this orphanage in Bangalore, than with a bunch of these amazing, very beautiful, very kind-hearted girls, rather than actually having parties. Of course, I had my fun, but there was also that aspect of having and building that empathy. And I also remember my mom always telling us, to finish the food on our plates, and at that point it's annoying, but you start to realize the importance of it. And like you said, between in when you're in kindergarten, if you start thinking of those things, you get to see the bigger picture as you grow much better, and that's when your mindset is shaped. So if we actually shape it to think eco-friendly, to think that we can make a difference, then it actually does work.
Absolutely. So that brings me also to another question that I wanted to ask you is how do you think we can incorporate the social emotional learning into our everyday, education, along with academics, along with sports, along with co-curriculars? Because I think it's time that we brought it, into the mainstream, right? So how do you think we can do that? Any ideas?
One is just having these casual discussions. So even if I'm learning like a subject in probably maths or physics, you know um, of course this is easiest to do in an English class, but I would encourage even math, English, physics, and STEM teachers, in fact, to just have those conversations, because science in itself is just beautiful. It's not just those formulae and those definitions. There's a lot more. Uh, there's a lot more to it. And if we just had small discussions around it, don't make it a project, don't make it an activity, because then immediately students become very averse to it. Instead, you just have a very small discussion, try to involve them. Then the other thing is, of course, to engage students in activities that would probably make them want to become change makers, and just have those kind of, let's say, encourage them, give them the recognition, because sometimes a lot more change comes from just being recognized for the little differences that you made, both by teachers and by parents. And I think, and that's very encouraging, and it's been very encouraging for me especially. So I would definitely say those are just some small things that can go, they can make a lot of difference in the long run.
Right. No, I think you're right. And like we say, science is basically how you live every day. Science is nothing. Social science is all around you. Science is all around you. So, like you said, that having those conversations, having those discussions, and somewhere I feel giving them little activities, like you said. Suppose you're reading about grains and you're reading about the step farming or anything, and dividing your class into teams and giving them, just putting a question that, do you see there is a problem outside in the world related to, whether you're talking about rice or wheat? So let the children go back, let them think about, is there a problem? And then they look around them, and they can come back with all the problems. Each child has his own problem, and then you tell them, okay, how do you solve it? you they come up with the problem, and then you ask them only to solve the problem. And that's somewhere, I think, when you make the children grow up like that, encouraging them, whether that solution works or not, I definitely feel that the biggest thing is that everybody needs to voice that this could be a solution. we will see whether it works or not. As students, I think the fear of judgment should be taken out of the picture, and then let children just say, yeah. This reminds me, Garvita, I was teaching grade ones, okay, and a few years back we had Sadhguru, driving the initiative of Save Rivers, right? So I was talking to my children on that day, and I said, so there is this drive which is called Save Rivers, and so, ma'am, what is Save Rivers? Why do we have to save rivers? I said, because some of the rivers, they just run dry. There is no water. So one tiny kid, and this is just, we are just generally talking. So he says, ma'am, why don't we fill up, what we can do? We can fill up lots of buckets in our house. And when that river dries up, we can just pour the water into that river. And I was just thinking that from a 5-year-old, 5.5-year-old to think, to find a solution, that itself is a big thing. Whether it works or not, we can, as you grow up, you can figure out, how it has to work. But that child thought of that, I need to find a solution so quickly. I mean, that's the easiest, right? So I think that's where you said it correct, that if we start having conversations early on, it's so much easier for you to grow up with that. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So let me come to one interesting thing, that, when you were walking this path, I'm sure you had, it must not have been easy. It must have been really difficult, like you said, convincing people. Any other such incident that comes to your mind where you really had to, you were on the verge of, should I continue or not, where you were ready to give up, and some things, what was it that, made you go on?
I think there have been a lot of,
I'm
instances
sure.
like that where I'm like, is this even worth doing, or is this even worth giving it the time? Because I was, staying up late trying to create these posters and at this, so something like, because when you start out on your own, you have to do every bit of the thing on your own, which is really great because I learned so much along the way. When I, look back, I learned how to design, I learned how to write, which I was horrible at. And I learned all of these, variety of skills just because I had to do it on my own. I didn't have anyone else to help me. But I also, and at that point, of course, it gets stressful, and it's a lot because, you're trying to manage your studies, you're trying to do this. And I remember like something that my parents told me when I started out was, and a few kind teachers, when I started out, they said, what you're doing is great. It's really nice that you're making this difference. But if your marks start reducing, then you got to stop. And well, I so then just trying to ensure that I have to do well in all of these spaces and just keep my head straight at the same time was it was very hard. And to get rejected by so many restaurant managers was again a hugely difficult task, and especially because I was just 15 then, and I'm trying to convince people to do something in which I also didn't know fully about. But that kind of drove me to realizing that one thing, that I don't know everything in the world, and these are experiences that are really teaching me things. And I think what really drove me at that point was when a few friends or a few relatives would actually send me pictures of like their glasses at restaurants which were empty. And I think that's like, it would just be one or two people. In the first year, it was just maybe 2 or 3 times that I got this. But I think those moments was very pivotal, because they take you from like the lowest of the lowest to the highest of the highest, because you realize that even if what you're trying to do has made a difference to one person, it can make a difference to a lot more people. Then when I was, working to get the National Restaurants Association of India on board, which is a national organization, very difficult to reach out to. Like normal people only aren't able to get to them. And I have decided that I'm going to bring them on my campaign. I have no resources, no money, no credibility, absolutely nothing. And I have filed a petition against them, and I am like trying to get them on board. And for me, that was important because they represent an industry of 5 lakh restaurants, and the impact is substantial.
Yeah.
I spent an entire year campaigning to get to them. I spent, this was from March 2018 to March 2019. I spent the last 6 to 8 months having just, so So I think in Jan 2019, I finally had my conversation with them. But the 6 months chunk before that, Jan 2019, the end of 2018, I was just trying my best to even get a contact over there, writing to them every day, emailing them regularly. And when you don't hear a response, you kind of want to stop.
Yeah, yeah.
But then someone would just write about the campaign and why it's so important, and then that would push me to call them again that day. Just because I know that, okay, this is an important thing that I'm doing. If someone else is recognizing it, that means I need to push. There's no one else doing this, so I have to do it.
And this is
And
after you have already been recognized so much, and you were already making a difference, and it took you so long to just get an appointment to speak to someone. I mean, and this is, I would say, like, it was the least of the things that a restaurant could have done. I mean, just instead of filling the glass full, keeping it half. I mean, what would it really change in their system, really?
so it was so difficult to reach to them. And my other goal was to really remove that law which rates restaurants based on the amount of water that they have in their glasses,
Oh,
and to actually start rating them higher for being more eco-friendly. So that was my goal. It was not just fill the glass half and all of those various things, but it was a very holistic and a systemic difference. And 6 months tried, called not just NRAI, but everyone I knew around me. I would bring up this topic. Do you know someone there? Do you know someone there? Just put all my energies. And very coincidentally, the day I got a call with them was a day before one of my semester finals at college. But I was like, I'm not letting this go. I'm just gonna have the conversation. And conversation went on for like 2 hours.
oh.
And it was good. Like, there was some hope, but then again, it's just hope. And it took a lot more convincing to actually get them on board, but now they're very wonderful partners with us. And we've been able to do a lot of work with them. We've been able to change norms.
Fantastic.
But I think that's what was worth it, just and what I also try to do when I feel like giving up is just look back at those small wins, and then realize that if I could do that, I can do a lot more.
Correct. And I think that is so important, that the little setbacks, or what we call little, even if it is a little failure or anything of a kind, it should fuel the passion that is inside you. And that really keeps it going. If those little setbacks fuel your passion, I think that's so important. So now that we're talking about your initiative, how about, I take Garvita back as a student, Garvita. So what is the one thing that you would want to change in our education system?
So I
And
still am a student
yes, you're
because I
still,
still have
yeah, you're
another
still
year.
a student, of course. You're pursuing your engineering degree. And okay, so let's put the whole school and the college education together. So what would you like to change?
So this is something that I realized when I walked into college, especially into an engineering college, where students are every day thinking of new innovative ideas to make a difference. But a lot of these are not sustainable. A lot of these ideas are really killing the planet. And I realized that kids don't care about it. Like, no, they just don't care about the impact that it's having on the planet. Where we should actually be using technology to help solve all of these issues. And so at that point I thought a lot about this, and how our education system is really not teaching people how to live sustainably. And by sustainably, I don't just mean with respect to the environment, but with respect to inequalities, with respect to just animal rights, also with respect to living with people, living with planet, all of these various things. Our education system was not teaching us any of these. And that's when I actually set up this college organization called the Changemakers Society, which focuses on a lot of colleges, where we just try to imbibe, these. We have change making activities and ideas, and we have conversations around it where we talk about why it's important to, why it's important to build solutions sustainably as people of the future. And it does not matter if you're just studying engineering. It could be any subject that you're studying, but you are, whether you're building policies or you're helping people have a more comfortable life, whatever you're trying to do, you need to ensure that it's happening sustainably. And with that holistic view, And so I think that's something that our education system really needs to integrate, especially after I brought this concept in and I saw the impact and the difference. I was having this conversation with my friend yesterday from college, and he was talking about how we should, he was complaining that, college does not have like a wet waste and a dry waste system, and how we need to have like a biogas. We should have, do a lot more things. There's no, and I said, have you actually gone back and seen what our college does? Because that's the first thing I checked when I walked into the university. I had like conversations with the chancellors, pro chancellors, and I just got everyone in a room, and I said, what are you doing, to be sustainable? And there were a couple of things set up after we had that conversations. There were some things that they had from before. So our university actually has like a complete rainwater harvesting system, water filtration system, a biogas plant, and with respect to waste management, I have, with my team of the Changemaker Society, we've actually gone and put up these posters on dustbins. We've gotten extra dustbins. We made the college buy extra dustbins, and then put up these, like I designed and printed it myself, so I know it exists. And then you hear someone else coming and saying, oh, this does not exist. I was like, buddy, have you seen what's there?
I think it's also that sometimes it's, because the conversations are happening, so people just need to be a part of that conversation.
Yeah.
Whether they've gone and checked whether in reality was it there or not is not really, up to them. They just want to talk about it. So, but I guess in a way that, like you said, that baby steps and the fights and the struggle to get things done. And from the very beginning, you've seen it happen for the past 5 years, and I think it's made you better at being out there in the world. You've learned it on your own, right? Those things were not taught to you. So being a change maker taught you so many of those skills that are needed to survive in the world outside.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, we are walking into what is called a VUCA world, volatile, ambiguous, uncertain. Um, and and it's so important for us to keep our heads straight, especially with everything else. I think social media is horrible. It's definitely a great way to get your message out, but otherwise, it's not really a great place to be. And we've seen so many people who've been negatively impacted by it, but we can't also completely let go of it, because now it's a part of our lives. And we, especially for me as a change maker, I just primarily use it to share my message, and absolutely nothing else. um,
No,
and
I think,
I find it very impactful.
yeah.
uh, Sorry, what happened?
No, go ahead, sorry.
Okay. And I find it very impactful, but you also know that it's there's so many things that are happening in the world. There's so many things changing, because of which, just having that skill set or that mindset of a change maker can be so powerful to help you power through any of these different things. And it's definitely helped me in a lot of ways. Like, take for example the pandemic itself. It was so difficult for us, because for I mean, I have no rights to say anything, because I have a roof on my head, and that itself is a blessing. So a lot of gratitude to that. But when it started out, we were so uncertain about what's going to happen. Are we even going to graduate this semester? And there were a lot of questions like that in the first month, and it was kind of scary, because you worked so hard, and then it all suddenly has to go. But I realized I was able to keep a much more straighter head and a much more calm and relaxed, just sensibility as compared to a lot of my peers, because I had gone through all of these various experiences of things working out, not working out, because I allowed myself to experiment, and I allowed myself to learn, and I put myself in those situations. I mean, I didn't have to go and argue with the NRAI to get norms changed. It's something that I just wanted to do, but that experience taught me so much.
Yeah.
And I think that's just one of those many, many experiences that I had as a change maker that have probably just helped me learn so many skills and so many different, and I still haven't learned it all. There's a lot more to learn, which I'm very excited about, because I want to know more about this world. But I can do it now with a much more open mind, with a much more calm mind. And I think that's why I would love for everyone to be a change maker, because just those experiences are so powerful.
Right. And I think what you said is correct, that, your social media, if it is a part of your life, is fine, but it should not become your life. I think that's
Yes.
where the difference is. And since you are able to maturely handle that, you've used it, you can use it to your benefit, but not let it rule you. right? That is where the difference is. And I think in a lot of ways social media has been a blessing in this time of
Yeah,
pandemic for
absolutely.
people to connect with each other. It has brought a lot of homes together, people who are away from each other. Those there are lots of positives for it, but I think rightly said that a lot of youngsters struggle with that also. So keeping a head on your shoulders has been your way to walk forward. So Garvita, during this time we talked about your struggles, we talked about all the obstacles and challenges that you went through. Was there a funny incident that ever happened with you, something
Uh,
that made you laugh and you were like, okay, that can happen too?
I probably laughed about it like much later, or
Uh-huh.
something that just makes you smirk or
Yeah.
mysteriously smile, maybe. Uh, but now, like, we laugh about it as like a family. But this was back when I was just starting out, and we were having dinner like with family, with some family friends, just another family and us, and there was a grain of rice that fell into like like the auntie was sitting beside me, into her glass, and she like just refused to, and it was not even like tadka wala rice or anything. It was plain white rice. It didn't even have like it didn't have any flavors, nothing. And she, no, not even salt. And she refused. There probably salt in the cooking, but yeah, it was very plain rice, and she just refused to drink the
That.
water. And it was a full glass of water that just got wasted. And then so I just picked up the glass in front of everyone and drank it. And everyone just stared at me like, what is she doing? Like, who does she think she is? And now we kind of laugh about it, because now we realize that it's not just it's a mindset problem. It's not about whether the water is clean or not, and that was very clean water, first of all. But it's just about not wasting. And even if you don't want it, or if there's actually something that's gone into it that you can't drink, don't throw it away. Go pour it in a plant right outside, in your balcony or something like that. So that's something that we really laugh about nowadays. But and just some incidents with the team. I have a very beautiful, wonderful, kind bunch of individuals who I work with. And something that we so one of our members, she's like the chief food officer. So every time we have meetings, she has to, she's the one who orders the food. But really, the idea behind it is that, they say they say that the way to a man's stomach is through food. Well, the way to our stomach is change makers, is also through food. Like, that's our team norm. And
Oh.
so till the time I don't give my team good food, they're not going to work. So we always have really nice, some really nice food, and we try to keep it sustainable, obviously. And we enjoy that, and it's just, a great way for us. But we're big time foodies, and we just endorse in that so much.
So good. I think you need to have fun along the journey, because if if you don't put in good food, the fuel inside, you're not going to have energy to fight those obstacles and challenges. But I think, Garvita, one thing that came out so strong when I'm talking to you also was that when you started one initiative, right, but it made you sensitive to so many other things around you. Isn't that true? That
Yeah.
if you start thinking on the lines of bringing a change in maybe one aspect of your society, but it makes you sensitive to so many others. Is that what happened?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially because you slowly start to realize how horribly intertwined all of these problems are. In fact, I actually put up this post on my Instagram about like 2, 3 days ago, I think, which talks about how pandemics and inequalities and climate change are all completely related to each other. The reason each of them happens is just because, like, they're just all interrelated. One thing impacts the other. We're clearly seeing again the gender no, issues happening during the pandemic. We're seeing climate change problems are horribly impacting those who come from the lower strata of the society, and that's unfair. So, all of these are so interrelated. And I was actually doing some reflection recently, and I realized that all of these problems, and especially everything that 2020 has brought to us, all of those fires and the gender inequalities, and all of these, hearing about the heinous crimes that people do on women, and
Yeah.
and animal cruelty, and also the pandemic, and again climate change. Finally, all of these really stem from this whole one concept of us being or thinking that we are better than others. um, and if you actually trace back every problem, it is because we of course it is the nature of us as beings to develop and grow to become better, but not at the cost of someone else. I think that's something that we cannot do. But at the same time, as a change maker, and I've had this conversation with a lot of my change maker friends, and we talk about this very often, is we start seeing everything in terms of solutions instead of actually complaining about them, which is, I think, beautiful. But at the same time, sometimes we get very overwhelmed by the amount of problems that's there, and we want to kind of solve everything. So that's something that I'm still learning on how to keep my head straight about it. Because everything that you see, you want to just make it better. You don't want to complain about it to anyone. You don't want to say blame anyone for it, but you would have thought of a solution and you want to change it, or you found someone who has a solution and you want to help them change it. So that's still something that I'm navigating through, for sure. But I think, really, if we can just put our heads together, it can be a much better, slowly be a much better world. Become a much
Correct. So true. And Garvita, that was so powerful, so inspiring, your entire talk. I mean, I've had a blast really talking to you, sharing your experiences with us. That was amazing. And I think that you've given our viewers and our listeners so much to chew on, that, these little things, the little changes that you can make within you, looking at somebody else with empathy, being more compassionate with each other, or looking around you and looking at finding problems and then trying to find a solution. If you don't have one, you can still go out and ask for help and try to, because I don't think any problem can be solved by yourself alone. It has to be a together movement, and if you're together, you can solve anything, whether it's related to your society or the world. So I think that's a beautiful message that you've shared with all of us, to go out there together, believe in yourself, go with, courage, be a change maker, and make this world a better place, right? So thank you so much, Garvita. I had a blast. I'm sure, we've got so much of inspiration from you, and we all pledge today to be change makers our own way.
I don't know who I can inspire, but thank you so much for asking me such difficult questions. I had a lot of fun thinking about
Oh,
it, and uh,
really? I thought I'm just going to ask you very, very something that you've lived, and been there.
but no one's ever asked it in that perspective. No one's asked me about the funny moments, and I had a really good
Ah,
time reflecting and thinking about that. So,
good,
so
good.
because I think sometimes when you're trying to change, everything just becomes a little bit too serious. But you need to kind of learn also that one, definitely celebrate change, because something that I've seen is that once one problem gets solved, or once some problem happens, we just jump onto the other one. But if you kind of just keep your head straight and just say, oh wow, that we did that, let's celebrate, now let's go to the next one, that makes so much more of a difference.
Absolutely. And we will keep, climbing those steps. We celebrate one change and we move to the next, like Garvita says. So thank you so much, Garvita. See you next time. Bye bye.
Thank you for having me. Bye.